Never miss another strange story. Subscribe and hit the bell. Sit back and get comfortable. I have a few stories to share with you. I'm not sure if posting this will even work. There's no signal in here, but it's worth a shot. I work at a hospital in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been here for about 3 months now, and I've gotten to know the hospital pretty well due to the fact that we provide a delivery service to patients on the higher up floors. I'm usually the one who volunteers to do those errands because wandering around is far more entertaining than having to show people where the chopstick is. Anyways, I received a delivery about an hour ago for a floral bouquet and some balloons to be delivered to a patient in the 8th floor of the hospital. As soon as my coworker arrived, I went off to deliver the goods. I wasn't able to get to the 8th floor, and this is where the story gets weird. I walked to the elevator, pressed the 8th floor, and the doors shut. As the doors were closing down, an automated voice said, "Going up." I watched the numbers increase on the small screen above the door. When I reached the 8th floor, however, the elevator stopped, but the doors did not open. I tried to push the button a few times, however nothing seemed to help, so I decided to press the button to the 1st floor. "Going down." I waited for the elevator to reach the 1st floor, however the same thing happened once we got there. The elevator stopped, but the doors did not open. I pressed the button to go to the 2nd floor instead. "Going up." The elevator rose, but again, the doors remained shut. I was starting to freak out a little bit, so I pressed the alarm. "Going down." The elevator went down to the 1st floor, but didn't stop there. This time, it went all the way down to the basement of the hospital, where the library and loading dock were. It stopped, but the doors yet again did not open. I pressed the alarm button once more. "Going down." I froze. Down? I was on the lowest level of the building. There was nothing below the basement. There wasn't even a button for anything below the basement, and yet the elevator was definitely going down. I pressed the 1st floor button once more. "Going down." The elevator sped up, going down even faster than before. I had to hold on to one of the bars inside to keep myself from falling down. "Last stop. Thank you for choosing Banner Health." Again, the doors did not open, but this time I could hear something outside. I pressed my ear to the elevator doors and listened. It sounded like footsteps, hundreds of them all at once. I then realized they were all chanting something. It became louder and louder until I was finally able to make out what they were saying.
"Last stop. Last stop."
I finally realized why it was getting louder. The chants, they were getting closer and closer to the elevator's doors. I pressed every single button in the elevator, however the automated voice kept repeating the same sentence over and over. "Last stop. Thank you for choosing Banner Health. Last stop. Thank you for choosing Banner Health. Last stop. Thank you for choosing Banner Health. Last stop. Last stop. Last stop." This went on for what seemed like hours. However, in reality, it was only 15 minutes according to my phone. Suddenly, everything went silent. I can still feel that there is something behind the door. It's been quiet for quite some time now. The elevator dings. I was confused for a second, but then I realized what that meant. The elevator's doors were finally opening. My husband locked me in the spare bedroom hours ago. I was lying on the couch in the living room, reading, when he called out for me. I found him in the spare room, and when I walked in, he pushed past me and locked the door. I thought he was pranking me or joking around, but he said, "It's safe in there. Do not make a sound. I'm not kidding, Grace. When you hear this knock, it's safe to come out. If the door unlocks, but you did not hear this knock, do not open the door." Then he knocked a special knock. "Repeat it so I know you know it," he called. "What the hell is going on? Jack, this isn't funny. You better let me out right now," I shouted, banging on the door. "Do the goddamn knock, Grace. Do not make a sound. I'm serious. I'll let you know when it's safe. I love you." I've never heard him sound so aggressive. I repeated his knock, and then I heard him walk away. I paced the room. I was worried, but I trusted Jack. I sat by the door for a while, hoping I'd hear something, but there was only silence. I looked out the window afterwards, but all I could see was the house next to ours, and not much else. I decided to take a nap to try and pass the time. I wasn't sure when Jack would be back, and I was getting quite restless. Eventually, I fell asleep. I remember dreaming that I was chained to a bed and was being watched by something. I woke up and sweat. I was tempted to call out for Jack, but I could hear a noise. I walked over to the door slowly and could very clearly hear heavy breathing coming from the other side of the door. I tried to look through the crack under the door, but could only see a dark shadow when I peered through it. Suddenly, I could hear knocks on the door. It wasn't the same special knock that Jack had done. The knocks got louder and louder, and soon it sounded like someone was slamming their whole body against the door. I covered my mouth just in case, but I didn't scream. I looked around the room for something I could use as a weapon, but the spare room was scarcely decorated. I picked up the lamp, hoping it'd suffice. The knocks and slams eventually stopped, and the house again became silent. Completely silent, except for the very distinct and heavy breathing. I stood at the door, ready with the lamp in hand, for what felt like eternity. Then, footsteps. At first, they were moving quickly and quietly, but then became slow and loud. With every thud, they were getting louder and louder, closer and closer. Whoever was there unlocked the door. Then I heard the knock. Jack's special knock. "You can come out now, Grace." It didn't sound like Jack though. It actually sounded like someone mimicking Jack. I didn't dare to speak. I stood there, clutching the lamp, holding my breath, saying a silent prayer. "You can come out now, Grace." The voice yelled over and over, piercing my ears, and then again, silence. Every so often, I can hear the sounds of chains, and every so often, the footsteps approach the door and do Jack's special knock, and I'm told I can come out. The mimicking is getting closer and closer to the sound of my Jack, but I know it's not him. I know it's not safe. I am not coming out. My wife and I have the most amazing little boy. He's only 2, but he's already smart, funny, caring, and generous. We are so blessed to have him in our lives. Natasha and I suffered for years and years of infertility, and I do not use the word lightly. We suffered. Emotionally, physically and financially. For 10 years, we went to different doctors, poured our hearts, money, even our family's money, and so many hours into starting our family. We endured everything you could think of. Countless bottles of vitamins, drugs, hormone therapy, and procedure after procedure, but everything seemed to fail. We were beginning the adoption process and looking into different agencies when we decided to give it one last shot. We were all in, as my wife liked to say. So what was one more thing to add to the list? It couldn't hurt, could it? Lo and behold, it worked. Just over 9 months later, we had a little boy of our own. He was absolutely perfect. Born April 21, 2017, with dimples just like mine. We immediately fell in love. Postpartum was so hard on her. She was so disappointed she couldn't breastfeed, so she made sure she did everything else and read every book and blog out there she could find. She did every bottle feeding, every diaper change, wore him around the house like a kangaroo. You name it, she did it. She does a wonderful job, and he is absolutely devoted to her. He just won't call her mom. No other form of mom either. No mama or mommy or even ma. He calls her Tata, which we assume is short for Natasha. It is breaking my heart, and it is slowly breaking my wife's heart as well. I see it in her eyes every time our little man runs at me when I come home from work, shouting "Daddy" as he leaps into my arms. I see her smile fade when my mother comes to visit and he calls her Nana. It isn't that he doesn't love Natasha, he cuddles and plays with her. They sing and have adorable dance routines, even inside jokes that crack both of them up. It is just concerning sometimes, and I know it bothers her especially when we all play together. Sometimes we would be tossing the ball around or something simple as such, and I will go, "Bring the ball to mommy," hoping he will run it over to Natasha. But time after time again, he will run straight to the basement door, look back at us, and smile. It is the strangest thing. He has always done it, and we just can't figure out why. It's not like he knows that is where we buried her. Karen, I think that was her name, his biological mother. He would have no memory of her at all. He only spent 10 minutes downstairs in total once he was born. We immediately brought him upstairs to his new room. In fact, he hasn't been downstairs since the day. He should have no memory of this event. Why won't he just call her mom? I don't know why I did it, but I guess curiosity will eventually catch up to the cat. It started about a year ago with me just watching YouTube videos on my laptop. Nothing serious, just those 4 true scary deep web horror stories type of videos. I found it interesting how possible and realistic all of the stories sounded, and I would watch them every night before I went to bed. Then I moved on to informational videos about how to access the deep web and what software would keep you safe from anyone with bad intentions. I never really considered using any of it, just thought it was something cool to learn about. However, I eventually moved past the initial awe and forgot completely about the ability to access the deep web. Well, about 3 weeks ago, I decided to watch another one of those scary videos, and then I watched a video on how to access the lower levels of the web. I was extremely bored and decided to download the software necessary and planned on just browsing the websites only slightly below the surface web. After about 30 minutes of setting everything up, I realized that some of the software would cost money, and I just decided to say screw it and look around without any protection software. I mean, it's just like the normal web if you don't go anywhere stupid, right? Eventually, I got bored of the normal internet and I found myself on a deep web search page. There were lists of different services, products, and so on. One that really stood out to me was the webcam and security camera website, a place in which anyone could watch whatever was being viewed on many compromised cameras around the world. It just blew my mind. I wish I had stopped there, but curiosity, again, brought out my inner cat. I decided to click on the website and was faced with hundreds of different perspectives, all from different cameras and different countries. I decided that I would come back to the website another time and try to hit the back arrow in the top left corner of my open tab. The page didn't respond, froze for about 2 minutes, and then the entire tab closed. I was a bit confused at what had just happened, but didn't think much of it. This morning, I decided to open up the software yet again, the first time in 3 weeks to be exact, and I navigated my way back to the security camera website. This time, however, it looked much different. Instead of hundreds of different camera streams, there was only one single camera view being displayed. I recognized myself in my room immediately, and as I looked up at the camera on top of my laptop, the image on the screen played back my movement with only a second or two of delay. There were instructions on the screen as well, and I think I've done everything perfectly. You watching this video should be enough time for everything to run its course. I'm sorry, I want you to know that, because you haven't done anything. But I guess life's not fair, and a person as myself knows how to make other people curious. I like your outfit, by the way. It suits your hair color. You might be confused. Don't worry, they'll be in contact soon. I always loved my twin sister, Amy. We were the perfect cliché of identical twins, doing everything together, finishing each other's sentences and playing pranks on people. We had a happy childhood, and for a good few years, everything went fine. It was only in the end of our adolescence that it became clear we weren't going to be two peas in a pod forever. Amy started to hang out with people I didn't like and became troublesome for our parents. We grew apart. I was in school clubs and dating. She was skipping classes, doing God knows what. At only 17, she always smelled of booze and looked tired and stoned. Sometimes the police would bring her home for trespassing or shoplifting. By then, I realized that she didn't have a bright future ahead, but I still loved her with all my heart. The years went by. I went to college, got married, and had a somewhat simple and boring but stable life. Amy was barely able to graduate high school, and was only able to get by because of our parents' pity for her. She was on and off rehab, on and off temporary jobs, on and off with dangerous-looking boyfriends. We didn't know what to do about her anymore. I tried so hard to be supportive, but I had my own life to take care of. She always found a way back to her addictions. One day, Amy simply disappeared. She vanished. It was painful and stressful for our family, but we easily accepted that some violent drug dealer got her, and maybe it was for the best to die young instead of keep suffering for a long time. I started to get anxious. I had constant nightmares of being stalked, strangled, or locked up forever. I felt observed at home. My husband and parents told me that I was being paranoid. I was under an extreme amount of stress, and was even considering spending some time in a mental ward for my own sake. I've been fighting my whole life to avoid falling into the craziness that runs in the family. Not now, I thought. I'm strong. I can handle this alone. So I agreed with going to therapy and nothing more. After a few weeks missing, Amy was back. She simply showed up at my house like she was never gone. She looked healthier than ever and sane, while I looked like a mess, emaciated from worrying too much, and with huge dark circles under my eyes from avoiding sleep because I was too terrified of the nightmares. I've been stalking you, Alice. I want to start over, but I can't do that under my own skin, so I need yours. At that moment, Amy was more Alice than me. It was astounding. During the few weeks she disappeared, she's been watching me all the time. I don't know how, but she had perfectly mimicked my whole demeanor, my usual haircut, my signature. She was able to convince anyone and everyone that I was her. So, just like that, I was put in a mental asylum for 2 whole years. For 730 entire days, I planned my revenge. I was cautious. I didn't want to actually become crazy. The medication was so strong. Sometimes I was knocked out for days straight. But I had a purpose. I used to love my sister, but she ruined her life, then stole mine. So now I hate her, and now she has to pay. For 2 full years, Amy slept with my husband like she was me. For 2 years, she smiled and cackled when she deserved to be miserable. For 2 years, she had our parents' love all for herself, and they pitied me altogether. So, I killed her. I strangled my own sister with my bare hands, buried the body in the backyard, and made a garden above her corpse. I took my place back. I took my life back. The fools didn't notice a thing. Nobody knows. They think Amy is gone for good with some outlaws. She is, somehow. It's all their fault. Am I going crazy like her? Am I losing it? I'll tell you a secret. Now, whenever I look in the mirror, I see my reflection laughing at me. Every time I get a box in my doorstep, my skin crawls. I used to have panic attacks, but now I know that A, the creepy gift will only come on my birthday, and B, it's inevitable. I never had simple pleasures such as waiting happily for something I bought online, or living for many years in the same house. I've been moving every year, and this person still finds me. According to my parents, the macabre tradition started when I was 10. My mother got an unknown box addressed to me, her only daughter, and naturally opened it to check it out. At 45, she literally had a heart attack. But my parents were still able to hide its nefarious contents from me. We moved to another house, and they were the ones to find my creepy gift the next year, yet again. When I turned 12, living in yet another house, I found the box for the first time. Needless to say, it really messed up my head. My parents tried to tell me that it was a sick joke, and that the thing was a fake one. For a while I tried to believe it, but it was hard, because I had to spend all my birthdays at the police station, and the policeman never addressed that like it was fake. I don't have friends or a boyfriend, and I live in fear. I've been homeschooled after I was 12, and always worked home office. The only thing I ever did outside of my house was going to therapy. My parents are getting too old to move around every year, so I've been living on my own lately. It's fine, as long as my lease and bills are under someone else's name. It makes me feel like I have some control over my life. I legally changed my name twice, but this person still finds me. Happy birthday to me. I'm spending it at the police station yet again, testifying the same thing all over. No, I don't know who this person could be. Yes, I tried setting up cameras, I tried having both policemen and private security at my doorstep to catch them, but it was to no avail. No, nothing out of the ordinary happened to me in the last couple of days, or in any other day of the year for that matter. No one has ever tried to kill me. I never wronged anybody, I never accidentally witnessed a crime, I never did anything that could make a murderer target me. Because this much is pretty clear, my predator is a murderer. Every year, I get a woman's scalp. I already got all types of slaughtered females. Old, young, middle-aged, blonde, brunette. This time, it was clear that the head belonged to a very young female. She couldn't have been older than 10. My heart sank. I hate how they always ask twice if I don't have any enemies, if I didn't steal someone's boyfriend. Because that's the first thing that goes to your mind, I guess. Killing someone and sending their head to your rival. There are many things about the situation that are even creepier than the scalps. The first, of course, is that I do my best to hide whenever I move to a new place, but the person doing this always finds me. The second is that the box always has fingerprints of a single person all over it. He or she doesn't even try to hide it. Whenever the police checks them out, there's never a match. As if this person doesn't exist, or it doesn't exist yet. Am I too crazy to consider that my attacker is a time traveler? The third thing is that when the police technicians run the DNA tests on the scalps, they always find the same result. Year after year, the dead female is me. You know that feeling you get when you're alone in the dark? The one that's not there during the daylight, or if there's someone else there beside you. You may have discussed this feeling with your friends, laughed it off as you told them that you found yourself running up the stairs last night, hardly daring but unable to stop yourself, glancing back down into the dark. Everyone knows that feeling. Right now, there's a woman in the basement storage room of her office building, searching through boxes of files with a torch for last year's tax return. The air is very still, but the hairs on the back of her neck are rising as though there's a breeze. She glances back over her shoulder towards the door, but sees nothing. She flicks through the papers a little faster, suddenly desperate for the chatter of the office above her. That moment, for her at least, is endless. There's a young man walking home from the bus stop, down a short path enveloped by trees. It cuts 5 minutes from his journey, and he always takes it without thinking. But once he's on the path, out of the soft orange glow of the streetlights, he regrets his decision. Every whisper of the wind, every rustle of the leaves makes him cast his eyes back behind him. In another minute or so, he will emerge onto the street and forgotten about this feeling completely until next time. Somewhere else, there's a girl in the shower washing her hair. This is usually a mundane task that she completes with barely a thought. But tonight, she's alone in the house and something is different. She keeps opening her eyes, soap burning through her retinas, to confirm that the bathroom is still empty. She feels exposed in a way that she never does when her parents are downstairs watching the television. Unseen, but their presence is still known. Another one in the living room of a shared flat. The flatmate left an hour ago or so. Through an archway in the corner of the eye is the dark, empty space of the kitchen. They realize that their eyes keep drifting over to that space until they are staring wide-eyed at the blankness. They lick their lips, thirsty. They do not venture into the dark kitchen for a much-craved glass of water. People have tried in the past to isolate and examine that feeling, find a reason for its being, explain it away with science and comforting, natural logic. They've all failed, of course. The feeling is not natural because what it perceives is not natural. You always tell yourself that you're just being paranoid and that it's just the leftover spooks from that last horror movie you watched. But I'm afraid that feeling is very real. It's primal and it knows. It puts you on high alert because it senses danger. And the eerie feelings come from not being able to perceive it with your first 5 senses. Of course, there's an easier way of describing this feeling. This thing that comes over you in the dark, empty spaces you find yourself in from time to time. It's me. Now, turn off the light, will you? Freddy wasn't your typical 13-year-old. He was an asshole. If he wasn't in his bedroom screaming at video games, he was scaring his 7-year-old sister. Every traumatizing prank he pulled on little Anna would be worse than the last. Once, he even told her that their mother had been murdered and covered the kitchen floor with ketchup for maximum effect. He was the reason she was so unstable. She would often tell their mother that she had heard whispers and had even seen ghosts wander around the house at night. Freddy would giggle at that, almost proud of the damage he had done. But unfortunately for Anna, it was never enough for him. He felt compelled to break her completely. The storm had kept Freddy awake that night. Restlessly, he tossed and turned in boredom. For a while, he tried to count sheep, but even that didn't help. In defeat, he lay mindlessly, watching the raindrops slide down his window. Lightning flashed suddenly, illuminating his entire room. It was soon followed by a deafening boom. Freddy smiled. He knew what was then to come. Freddy heard his sister crying through the wall, closely followed by a faint pitter-patter as she ran to their mother's room. This was it, his moment of fun. He crept down the hallway and into Anna's bedroom. He prowled around her room like a serial killer, studying every inch of it. Countless ideas rushed through his mind. Then he saw the closet. Freddy waited in the dark for what seemed like forever, peering through a small gap between the closet doors. He had decided that when his sister returned and settled into bed, he would begin to whisper. Then, once she was completely terrified, he would burst out and run at her, screaming at the top of his lungs. He had almost lost all hope and was about to leave when he heard the footsteps approaching. His mother opened the bedroom door and Anna slowly shuffled in. She was sucking her thumb and dragging her favorite blanket behind her. As she crawled into bed, Freddy couldn't help but grin in excitement. Freddy watched in silence as their mother tucked Anna tightly into bed, planted a big kiss on her forehead, and finally said goodnight. He waited anxiously until he heard his mother's door close before beginning. This is it, he thought, shaking in delirium. The moment I break her.
Anna,
Freddy whispered hauntingly. She didn't respond.
Anna,
he continued. Still, no response.
I'm in the closet, Anna. Come play with me.
He harshly croaked. Not tonight, Lucy, Anna calmly replied. Freddy frowned in confusion. She must be sleep-talking, he thought.
Wake up, Anna.
It's not. A hand reached out from behind him, pulled Freddy back in the darkness, and clutched over his mouth with a cold, tight grip.
She said, not tonight.
I'm a young man in my 20s. The typical kind, you would say. I had a girlfriend until she was killed in her own room, thousands of miles away from me. I witnessed everything over Skype. It was a late autumn afternoon. I sat down on the couch with my laptop and pressed call on Skype. Me and my girl, we had been in this relationship for longer than most people would expect from a pair of millennials living on the opposite side of the globe. The Skype thing, for us, was kind of a scheduled daily ritual that bridged the distance and sustained the love. A healthy habit, if you may. The ringing tone stretched out into what sounded like millennia. I smiled, getting ready to greet her blissful face, always too close to the camera. That was what was special about her. A certain clumsiness and innocence oozing out of every little thing she did. From the big brown sparkly eyes, from the unknown baby hair, from the killer smile that... My thoughts were violently interrupted when a masked figure appeared on the call window. I yelped, but the deep dark stare from behind the eye cutouts stayed undisturbed. It looked unapologetically at the camera, then slowly backed up, letting the whole scene be captured. My heart tensed. My girlfriend was lying on her bed, motionless. The masked thing grabbed her and jerked her head up to look straight at me. Its finger pointed at the bloody mess that now covered the entire room, then moved up to its lips in a shushing gesture. The brutality of the scene paralyzed me in my seat. I covered my mouth with my hands to stop myself from vomiting. My eyes stayed fixed and frozen on the surreal sight in front of me. A silent scream was lost amid the vortex of emotions inside my brain. The masked killer dropped my girlfriend's head, winked at me, then quietly backed out of the room. Silence. I was left there staring at a corpse of the girl I loved, lying on the bed that turned crimson from her blood. A physical metaphor for the bed of roses I once promised her. I guess you get what you deserve, I thought bitterly and pressed end call. I sipped my coffee, satisfied, not letting my guilt take over the pleasure. I gave myself a 10 out of 10 for such a genius plan of hiring an assassin to murder my cheating girlfriend. All I needed to do was to pick up the phone and call her local police station, and to play the role of the distraught witness, thousands of miles away. The phone rang as I reached for it. Mildly perplexed, I took the call.
Hey, it's me. It looks like someone is with her. A man. Probably her new you-know guy. You have to postpone the surprise party today. Speak later,
said the distorted voice of the assassin I hired. The headaches were there in the beginning. I remember the pain better than I remember my first words or my first day at school. Mom used to say, "Donnie Gladfield, you think too much. You'll stress yourself out." But despite my greatest attempts, despite meditation, alcohol, smoking, all the good and bad you can name as an escape, the tension at the top of my skull never went away. My first doctor wrote it off as a psychological issue, but I wasn't psycho anything. The pain, for me, was all too real. I happened to be clever, an overachiever. The advice given by parents and teachers was to not be so hard on myself. I was doing great already. I took their advice at face value. I learned to live with it. By the time 28 rolled around, I was used to the pain. I had my own place. I was dating a girl. I had a good job. The tension was part of who I was. In fact, something about being in this state of despair made me work harder. It made me want to prove that the pain meant something. Almost as if I had rid myself of the burden. Dana and I decided to start a family. It had been both of our dreams. A family would make us happy. We tried so hard. This time, the doctor said that I had to relax, that the stress was harming our chances. Several months later, Dana left me. She said I was miserable. I was. She said I needed to get myself sorted. I needed to get rid of whatever I was holding on to. I needed help. All I wanted was to live a normal life. This time, I was put in line for an MRI in my local. The pain had never been worse. What had once been an ache in my skull had spread to my neck and shoulders. The doctor stared at his computer screen, sweat beading across his forehead. "I'm not sure how to say this," he said. "Spit it out, Doc." The doctor paused. "You have a tumor at the base of your skull." "That's not all," the doctor said. "It's growing hair, teeth, arms, and legs. It's been living inside of you for God knows how long." I swallowed, trying to process what he just said. "Its fingers have been preying away at the inside of your skull for what looked like years." "We've got days, maybe hours, Mr. Gladfield. We must act." The pressure at the top of my head increased. There was a sharp prick from inside the skin, and a warm dribble rolled down the back of my neck. I think it's finally coming out.